Hi guys, welcome back to the shop. I'm Karl and this is karlpopewoodcraft. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and following me in my journey to progress as a woodworker. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be making a jointing jig for the table saw. Reasons I'm going to be doing that is because I don't have a jointer, or as in England as we call it, a planer, and I've got some projects what I want to be working on for Christmas, making some gifts for people, and I've got some boards what will need jointing. So I had a good look around on YouTube and online, and I found the what I consider the best way of doing it, which I think is using the table saw if you haven't got a jointer, and the simplest sled that I could find, but most effective, and one that doesn't need much hardware. So the only hardware you're going to need for this task then today, guys, is these toggle clamps, which I purchased off Amazon, and I'll put the link below for you. They're only a few pounds each. Seem pretty good quality, and I'll pop that link below. And we're going to need a couple of sheets of small sheets of plywood, so I'm just going to have a look around through the scraps, see what I've got, and we'll use that, and just some screws and glue. That's it. I had a rummage round in the woodshed, and I found this piece of, looks like 18mm, yeah, 18mm, and this piece of 15mm. So I've got an 18mm piece of Far Eastern plywood and a 15mm piece, so they'll do well for the task. They're in pretty good condition apart from a bit of water stain on there, but I'll cut that off, and need a little sand down, so I'll give them a quick sand, trim them to size, and then we'll go through the dimensions and that exactly what we're going to cut it down to. After sanding the boards down, I straighten the edges up on the table saw and get the pieces of timber down to the rough dimensions. After passing the plywood through the first time, I then flip it over, adjust the table a couple of millimetres, and clean the opposite side up as well. You'll probably notice here as well that I'm using a different piece of plywood to what I stated at the beginning of the video, as I found one what was already about 6 inches wide, so I thought I might as well use that one rather than wasting more plywood. What I do here is I just clamp the board down, and as you can see I left it hanging over a couple of mil, which you'll see why later. I then roughly mark out exactly where the screws are going to go and roughly place the clamps into position. On this build you can see I'm only using 3 toggle clamps, and the sled is about 3 foot long, so 3 toggle clamps to hold a probably maximum 5-6 foot piece of timber down should suffice. Here I am countersinking and screwing 2 screws in either end of the board, and then I also put a couple of screws down in the centre of the board, and I also glued the board down as well. However, for some reason I lost that little bit of footage of me gluing the board down, but it's pretty simple anyway. Now you can see I'm using the combination square to mark out where I'm going to position the clamps, and I just put them approximately a centimetre in on the top board and make sure they're square, and just screw them into place. Next I move over to the miter saw, and I just squared each end of the sled up. It's approximately 3 foot in length. That's not really that important as long as it fits your table saw and it's big enough for the boards that you want to be straightening up. After squaring the ends up on the miter saw, I take the sled over to the table saw and I run it across the table saw and take a couple of millimeters off the open side, and then I flip it over, and then that 2mm overhang that we had on the toggle side we remove and make the whole sled parallel. Here you can see where we've removed the 2mm overhang, and everything should be now parallel and flush on both sides. Right, I'm just going to take you through how it works. So as you can see, is the finished product, and I've got this piece of board here which you can see is incredibly warped because I've just ran it through the bandsaw, made it like that. It's just a piece of pallet wood. So we'll take this through. We'll run it through, straighten this board out, show you how it works, and then I'll take you through some of the drawbacks and some of the capabilities of the sled itself. Next, I adjust the table saw just to take a couple of millimeters off the board that I'm joining and run that through the saw, giving me a nice clean edge on one side of the board that's getting jointed. So after running the piece of timber through the saw on the sled the first time, I then remove it from the sled and I run the clean edge, what's just been cut, along the fence of the table saw, and now I should get a nice clean jointed edge on both sides of the board. And there you have it, guys. A perfectly acceptable jointed board. Lovely and square. There's the offcut. As you can see, it does a good job, it works. But we'll just go over a couple of things. Now, as you can see, I've cut another probably 3 inches off my board because predominantly I'm going to be squaring up pallet wood using my sled. And when you come to mount your pieces of timber onto the sled, obviously you need to be able to clamp these down onto the sled, leaving enough clearance for the blade to get past your sled without damaging your sled. Now, if you're doing quite narrow pieces like pallet wood is, you're going to have quite a narrow sled, i.e. this portion of the sled here. So this, you can only cut down the narrowest timber to what proportion of size this is. So if you're going to be cutting wider boards, you're probably going to need to make another sled. So when I'm doing tabletops and what have you, I'm going to make another sled where I can fit a 9-inch or an 8-inch board on there, and then I can use this one for my smaller pieces of timber. I don't think I'm ever going to be cutting straight edging any of the pieces smaller than that. If I do, I might make another one. So I might end up with 3 of these sleds, which is perfectly acceptable. I think to make, they're only dead cheap to make. You make them out of scraps, and these clamps are only a few quid each. When it comes to adjusting the toggles, now when you come to tighten these nuts up, do not over tighten them, just hand tighten them. And I've found with a bit of fiddling around, the easiest way to adjust them is only hand tight. And if you hold that top nut and this washer here in position and rotate the bolt itself, you can adjust down and then you can adjust back up, as long as you keep a little bit of pressure on this top nut. If you want to go higher up for a thicker piece of timber, you're going to have to take this nut down a bit, and then you can just simply pull it all back down, hold that, and then wind it again until it fully tightens. and then just tighten that back up. So it's quite a fiddly little process, but if you're just using it for a set type of timber, say you're making tabletops and they're all 2 inches thick, it's totally fine, isn't it? You just have your bigger sled, if you're making 3 of these, your bigger sled set up so they can take the 2-inch boards. You have your smaller sled set up so you can take, you know, 1/4-inch boards for your pallet wood, you know, stuff like that. So a little bit fiddy, but not too bad. Also, you can see I've added a couple of extra screws here which go through the top piece of timber into the bottom portion of the sled, and that was just because when these was a little bit tight, it was just pulling up on the top piece, so they go through both because these screws never. And apart from that, I think it's a really good design. Does what it's meant to do, squares your boards up, and if you haven't got a jointer, making 3 of these, I think a different sizes is a perfect solution. So if you like what you've seen today, guys, and you've enjoyed the video, please subscribe, hit that bell, and think about watching more. I really appreciate that, and look forward to the next one, which hopefully is going to be the pallet wood Christmas trees. However, that timber was soaking wet, that's why I haven't done that today, and they're still drying out down there. But hopefully by next week they'll be dry enough to assemble some pallet wood Christmas trees, and I'll catch you on the next one, guys. Bye. I'd also like to say thank you to Walker's Woodworks, as I used his channel for the main inspiration for my sled today, and shout out goes to him, and I'll put a link to his channel in my description. Cheers, guys.